Training and education, huge. Lender partnerships, huge. To be honest, agents don't really understand the value of that.
Welcome to this episode of Brooks on the Money. I'm really excited to interview Renee Barfoot today, a longtime Lake Highlands resident, Lake Highlands High School graduate, and fantastic real estate agent. And we're just going to chat a little bit and talk about the market and what's going on. So welcome, Renee.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So tell me a little bit about your journey from Atlanta to Dallas and growing up here and seeing the changes in Lake Highlands. It's you've been here for a long time.
Yeah, over 40 years. We moved. I was born in Atlanta. We moved to Dallas when I was 13 years old. Went to Lake Highlands Junior High, Lake Highlands High School. Went to SMU. So really never moved around a lot. But
3 miles from home.
Yep.
Yeah.
And my husband and I have been here back in Lake Highlands raising our girls. They're 20 and 23 now, but both went through Lake Highlands schools and been doing real estate in Lake Highlands and surrounding areas for about 10 years.
For 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the market's really changed a lot. And in those 10 years, it's that 2015, was a great market, I thought, because there was a lot of ebb and flow, lots of buyers and sellers. Home prices weren't ridiculously crazy. Then you got to go through the COVID craziness of what we saw there. Today it's way different. So what are you seeing in the market today? And just tell us about what you see from a day-to-day perspective.
It's been a rough market this spring for sure. It's definitely, it's trended a lot slower than what we've seen in years past, like 2024, 2023. Certainly different than right after COVID. I've actually seen an uptick just this week on my listings and showing requests, and so that's great news. Yeah. So there's definitely a lot of motivation I'm seeing on buyers' parts to get back out there. I think they were concerned about the rates for a while, and now that they've kind of plateaued, evened out, you can speak to that better than I can. But yeah, so but it's been a rough spring for sellers for sure. Great time for buyers to be out there.
I think that's great. And it's been a long time since we've seen a decent buyer's market. Like there was moments in 18 and 19 where that was there, but that's 6 years ago.
Yeah.
And prior to that, it was 2014, 2013. So the sellers have had a great run for a really long time. And I'm sure most sellers don't want to hear that, but it's the market can't always go up 8-10%, and
right.
Dallas, the historic appreciation's around 3 or 4%. If you bring in the last few years, it pushes it up a little bit, but it's nice to see buyers and sellers have to negotiate a little bit. There's some price reductions, there's some seller paid closing costs. And so it's really nice to see a market where it's a free market and it's not, the supply and demand chain doesn't dictate that. Like the sellers actually or buyers get to actually make offers instead of be told what they need to do.
Exactly. Yes.
And I think Lake Highlands historically has always been a very tight market when it comes to inventory, right?
Very much so.
So they're not really used to what they're seeing right now.
No, not at all. And I love that you brought up the seller concession, because I think a lot of buyers and sellers, and to be honest, agents don't really understand the value of that.
Yeah.
I think negotiating an offer with a buyer client where you can offer a competitive price, but then ask for the seller to give you a concession to buy your rate down is really important, because that's kind of what's scaring a lot of buyers right now. And it's such a great strategy to the seller still nets the same thing. You just arrange the offer a little differently so that they're giving that buyer some money at closing to buy their rate down. And it's a game changer, I think.
Yeah, I do too. And we try to show clients that when we're doing a consultation of what it actually looks like from a $10,000 reduction in sales price versus $10,000 in closing costs, utilized to buy the rate down either temporarily or permanently. So, I mean, it's a very minuscule. It's $50 a month if you take that off the monthly payment. But
Yep.
if you can lower the rate by 0.5% on a big loan, you're a few $100s a month, and
Yep.
that's a big difference,
Yeah, big
especially in a
difference.
permanent nature.
And I think as realtors, we honestly have to be prepared to educate the agent on the other side, because if the listing agent isn't informed about that, then they don't really understand what we're asking. And so it's real important for us to have relationships with lenders like you, where we really understand it, so we can educate the listing agent so they understand.
For sure. Yeah. And it's really important for the buyer to understand it too. And so many times they're just flying blind, and they're trying to get whatever information they can off the internet, or, hopefully their lender says something to them about that. But there's so many strategies to go about this. And that's kind of, I mean, I really like markets like this. My favorite market was 11 to 2013. I'm dating myself. I've been in this industry for 18 years now, but it was really fun because it was a negotiation. Like, yeah, deals fell out, contracts fell out because negotiations went bad over repairs, or they found a better house in the meantime, or something like that. But overall, it was a negotiation, and that's kind of the fun part about this. That's why real estate agents exist on the buy and sell side. It's not just to facilitate, it was to negotiate.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I think it's more fun this way. Obviously, it's tough when the sellers dictate and it's list price or over, there's multiple offers, and there's so much anxiety. And so you got to really lower that. So how do you deal with buyers or sellers' anxiety in situations like this?
Well, I'm dealing with a lot of seller anxiety right now, to be honest. Houses are sitting on the market for way over the average days on market. Just helping them stay informed about the market trends, about what the Fed is doing, what our trusted lenders like you are telling us about projections. And I think the trend in Dallas right now is for things to peak in June, which is pretty abnormal. We're used to seeing that peak in April, March, even sometimes back in 2021, it was March.
Yeah.
But just keeping them informed and letting them know I'm doing my due diligence to get information out about their house, giving them constant feedback from buyers. But it's tough to be a seller right now.
Yeah. Yeah. So is it because you educate them as much as they can, but is it just because there's not enough showings, or there's not enough activity? And how do you cure that for a seller?
I think for me, it's a trusted relationship between me and my sellers. They value my opinion. They know that I'm working as hard as I can. I'm staying in constant communication with them about the showings that we do have, about my conversations with the other agents. And I'm talking with agents constantly right now. Anyone who books a showing, I'm calling them to talk to them about the house, to tell them all the great things about it, to meet the potential buyer objections before they ever enter the house. I'm validating the price that we have, the listing price. I'm validating that by explaining why we came to the decision to list it where we did.
Yeah.
And I think my sellers really appreciate that communication. And, I've gained great relationships with other agents, even if they don't end up making an offer on the house, because they then are like, they can trust me too, because I'm reaching out and being proactive and talking with them. I'm not just putting my sign in the front yard and being like, hope someone buys it, because you cannot do that right now in this market.
For all those that think they can for sale by owner, or, list it with a discount broker, they're up for a wake up call, in any market, because my opinion on that is, if you're not represented by a professional, then the professionals are going to take advantage of you. So if you
Mhm.
have a buyer's agent and you're not listing your house with someone, you're not going to get the best sale price out of that. And
Yeah.
it's very short-sighted not to hire a professional to do that. And so I know you give exceptional service to all buyers and sellers, and it's well worth the fee that comes with that. And I wish most people or all people do that. You get what you pay for.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, for sure. So is the listing, is it that there's too much inventory or there's just not enough buyers right now?
I don't think there's too much inventory. I think sellers are kind of sitting on the fence a little bit, waiting for something to change. So I had 3 showings on a listing that I've had for about a month, 3 showings this week, no showings last week, and 1 showing the week prior. And what I heard from agents as I would talk with them was, well, my clients just got into their search. And so they're kind of new to the game and they're trying to feel their way around the market right now. And so that's good. I'm glad buyers are getting back out there,
Yeah.
and feeling more confident. Um, and it's also frustrating for the sellers because they're like, oh, someone just make a decision.
Yeah, they probably spray market and think they're
Mhm.
gonna be
Yeah.
flowing and it's not so much.
Yeah. But, I have a couple other listings that are about to come up. And as I've talked with my clients through the spring, I said, I think we might want to wait just a little bit before we actually put it on the market. And so those are just coming up. And I feel like it'll be, a more successful run since more buyers are getting out there and getting active again.
Yeah, I mean, from what I see, because I'm not so local, like I mean, I finance in lots of states, but mostly all over the Metroplex. And I think it's more area specific to anything because I see other areas going like crazy. Lake Highlands has seen a lot of values increase over the last few years, and it might be the affordability thing. I'm not really sure why it is area to area or even house to house. For a lot of people say that, they could list a house in a neighborhood and they just don't know. It could sell in hours. It could sell in weeks. They think it's going to sell in hours and it might take weeks or vice versa. And so there's really no rhyme or reason at the moment. It's about that particular buyer walking through the door of the house that they love, because if the house fits the buyer.
I'm seeing a bigger uptick of buyers who want every single thing updated. They want to walk in, move in ready, and not have to do a thing. And it's interesting because I think, particularly in Lake Highlands, we've seen a lot of sales over the past 5 years where homes need some minor improvements, maybe nothing major, but, like a kitchen countertop or a master bathroom or something. And it's never been an issue. And it's more and more an issue if buyers they want everything done. Maybe because they're putting more of their cash into the house with the rates the way they are. But again, I go back to that seller concession, giving the buyer cash to buy their rate down, and then you have your extra cash to put in to pop it on some new countertops. But it's definitely a trend I'm seeing in and around Dallas.
Well, yeah, it's a concept that I think has been put out there, sell like a builder. And if you go into a new home community, what do the buyers want? Well, they want a good monthly payment, they want the least amount of cash to close, and they want the nice stuff in their home. So how do you meet that demand in a neighborhood that's, 40, 50, 60 years old and not every house is updated or brand new? So how do you meet that demand? Well, that's the conversation. I think the realistic conversation with the seller is, this is the price, this is what it's worth, but it doesn't mean that you're going to get it because the buyer pool is very different today. These are the strategies that we can utilize to do that, whether it's a, allowance for the Formica to be turned into granite or, seller credit for a buy down or seller credit for closing costs or all of the above, even, depending on the situation. Is you got to think that concept because the builders have figured it out in some way. But you got to live out in Timbuktu if you want to build with them. And
Yes.
it's not everybody's cup of tea, especially mine. So, I think you got to find those kind of strategies. And if you think like that, and get your sellers thinking like that from the beginning, like maybe we don't have to price it like this from the beginning, but these are the strategies that we're going to utilize if the home doesn't sell in the first couple of weeks.
Oh, yeah. And price is monument right now. I mean, sellers aren't wanting to hear it. You know, they want to push the market, push the price, test, and that doesn't work right now. Yeah. Like, pricing is everything. And I'm hating seeing sellers who are having to consistently lower their listing price. Yeah, I just had a call this week from someone who saw one of my listings, and she was like, why did the other contract fall through? And I said, we haven't had a contract on it yet. And she was confused because we had taken off the market for 3 weeks for the sellers to refinish the floors. Oh. And that was a big buyer objection they'd seen when we were showing it. And she was confused and thought it had been under contract and came back on the market. And that's not what happened. And I had to explain it to her. And you can easily, as a listing, I mean, any agent, you can look at the history and see if it's been on the market or not.
So you mentioned 2 girls, so 20 and 23, in college right now, you said?
My 20-year-old is about to be a junior at University of Arkansas. My 23-year-old is working as a pre-K teacher in Richardson ISD, like 5 minutes from our house.
Awesome.
Yep.
Yeah. Great school district. My wife worked for our ISD. I'm not sure my kids go, so good move there for sure. Yeah. Where did she go? Arkansas too? Or?
Yeah, she went to Arkansas, and they've both gone through school in Lake Highlands, as did my husband and me.
So how do you balance all that? 2 kids and a job and a husband, and like how do you have balance in your life? Because real estate's a 24/7 job. Your phone probably rings all hours of the day, and with text messages and all that stuff. How do you keep that balance and keep saying through all those?
You know, it's easier now than it was when the girls were younger, when I first started, because they didn't really understand what I was doing. I mean, they did, but not to the extent that they do now. And now, like, my client stories are my family stories. Like, I tell my family all the things happening with my clients. I know about the ins and outs of their lives. They know about my life. And I talk I talk about my clients and their story with my family. So they really understand, and they're my biggest champions. I mean, I was getting ready to come here today, and my 23-year-old had come home to take a quick lunch break. Mm-hmm. It's her last day of school at Merriman Park. Yeah. And she's like, how are you feeling? And I was like, oh, I'm kind of nervous. I've never really done a podcast. And she's like, you've got it, Mama. Like, you can do it. And, it's like just having them cheer me on. And they know I work so hard. They know how much I care about my people. Yeah. They know how much I have vested in it, and they appreciate it. And I mean, my success trickles down to my kids and my husband. And because
your work ethic too, right?
Absolutely.
Hard workers, because they see their mom working like that.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah.
For sure. Well, that's great that she's back here, and hopefully your other daughter will come back too after. Is she a early education major as well?
No, she's psychology, focus on kids, maybe hospital setting. But she has just talked to us about starting graduate school. Like, she's thinking forward to that and really wants to be back in Dallas. So, of course, my mama heart wants her to, oh, heck no, not SMU. I went there, but no. But yeah, she's looking at graduate programs around here.
Awesome.
But yeah.
So I haven't seen this as much recently, but during COVID, there were new agents everywhere. What would your advice be to somebody that's starting to be a real estate agent right now?
That's a great question. So my whole career, realtor and other jobs I've had before this, I've always been passionate about mentoring new people, getting into whatever industry I've been in. Mm-hmm. I was a teacher in Richardson for 14 years. The last 6 years I spent in a position where I was mentoring new teachers and helping struggling teachers. Yeah. I got into the nonprofit industry for a while and was mentoring an assistant who has, taken off. I love seeing what she's doing to this day. It's not because of me. I'm just saying I loved our relationship,
Right.
and then in real estate, I always flock to the new agents who are struggling. I always put myself out there to be there to walk them through writing their first offer, walk them through the compliance documents, just all the things. Like, that's really my passion.
Yeah.
It's one of the reasons why I really love first-time home buyers and senior buyers, because the first-time home buyers have never been through the home buying process, and a lot of our older adult sellers and buyers haven't done it in 40 years. So much has changed. So there's just a lot of mentoring to happen. And so for me with new agents, I'd say you can't think of this as a side gig. It's a full-time job. And if you're not going to make it your full-time job, you can't be a teacher and then a realtor on the side. You have to be available 24/7. I mean, maybe not from like midnight to 5 a.m., but you know what I mean? I mean, you have to really be available.
Yeah.
And training and education, huge. Lender partnerships, huge. Having really great lenders that you really know can get your clients to the finish line and you don't have to second guess anything they're doing. That's why I love my relationship with you, because you help my clients time and time again, and you never fail. And so every time I'm working with a new agent, trying to help them as they're gaining momentum in the industry, those are kind of my three things: is you got to be on 24/7. You've got to continually educate yourself so that you're learning all the latest, everything that there is to know about the market right now.
Yeah.
And you got to have relationships with amazing lenders and then amazing title companies.
Yeah. It sounds like the mentor piece of it is probably the best thing they can do is to be assigned or find somebody that leads them in the right direction. Because to try to find trusted partners or try to find training and education, not every brokerage offers a lot of that stuff. And so having a mentor that leads you to those right places, even to the right brokerage, to make sure that you do get that early education that you need, because the failure rates are too high in the industry. It's either too easy to get in or it's too hard to stay in because there's not enough structure to it,
Oh, for sure. And I know for me, when I first got into the industry about 10 years ago, having mentor realtors on my side was huge. And they pointed me in the places where I could go to get like really valuable education and training.
Yeah.
And being at a brokerage where you have someone who can be assigned as your mentor to hold your hand and literally walk with you through the first few contracts.
Yeah.
And I mean, this as well as I do. No transaction is the same. No. So you're always learning something new, whether you've been in it 18 years like you or 10 years like me. Every transaction is different. You're always learning something new, and you cannot be afraid to look for answers, seek guidance, get help from other realtors, because, there may be someone who's been in the industry less time than I have, but they've gone through a transaction that I haven't, and they have great experience. And so, like, just not being afraid to learn from anyone is huge.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, that's good advice. Sorry, that's good advice for sure. So, yeah. We really didn't get into your personal life. I heard through the grapevine that you're into antiques. Is that right?
I am.
What is that? Do you go antique shopping, or you like to refurbish them, or what do you mean?
Oh, I do not refurbish them.
No.
I just love to be on the hunt.
Yeah. What are you hunting for?
I don't know. Well, okay. I've always been into antiques. I think my grandparents and my parents, who inherited things from family members, and then my mother-in-law, who was a lover and curator of really great pieces. Mm-hmm. They kind of instilled that love in me of antiques. Mm-hmm. And I love, there's a trend, it's not really new, but a trend called the Grand Millennial style. And it combines like the grandma style with the young person, modern, clean lines, light colors, and you combine all of that together. And that's what I love. So, we actually, 6 years ago had a house fire at the home that we've lived in for 22 years in Lake Highlands. And yeah. And so we lost everything. And I had some really treasured antique pieces in the house. One was a china cabinet from my dad's grandmother, and one was this barley twist table that it was the first piece of furniture my husband and I ever bought together in Canton, Texas. And they told me they couldn't be restored. And I was like, nope, put them in storage. I want to try to figure it out. And we lost, like I said, just about everything else. But I did find someone and probably spent way too much to have those two pieces restored, and they're back in our house now. And so that's really special. But it's given me this excuse, which I think is a great excuse, to go back and look for more antiques. So, yep. But yeah, I mean, I always find I call them treasures, like little things that, like salt cellars or little tiny baby silver spoons, or just something that right now I'm collecting milk glass cake plates. Okay. No one understands it in my family, but it makes me happy. So that's fine.
My wife, when she does succulent arrangements, and for a while she was doing them in like those really funky, like 70s, 60s, 70s, like blown glass.
Yes.
I don't know what it's called, but you probably do. But we have a ton of that stuff at the house because
I need to get together with her.
Yeah, she's got a lot of cool stuff.
That would be awesome. But I think like the hunting and gathering, men and women, they say women are hunters. No, men are hunters, women are gatherers. Yeah. Like that gathering thing, passion in me has a lot to do with my real estate, because being out there looking for the right house for a buyer, and I see it all the time in couples where the husband's like, this is great, we'll take it, and the wife's like, no, I want to go look at 5 more, and then we'll decide. So
go back to the first one. Yeah, and you're gathering a great group of people, all your past clients and the people that you served over the years. And at 10 years in this business, you for sure made it, and that gives you that feeling of security. Even though the market might be weird, you still have hundreds of past clients that look to you for advice in real estate. And that's huge, because that's what gives you the longevity in the business and allowed you to really serve from a servant's heart instead of, I got to make it fail,
Yes, absolutely. And I feel like I'm glad you said that, because that is the heart of my entire business, is having a servant's heart, and kind of the ministry piece, which sounds strange. But you asked earlier, and I'm going to answer it now, but I got into this business because I'd been in a nonprofit, and we were really making a difference in the lives of women and their children who had just come out of homelessness, and curated these beautiful homes for them to move into. And I was like, I feel like I could take that same kind of philosophy and move it into real estate. And how I've done that is working with clients, like I said, where we really develop a relationship and a story. And one of my favorite clients is Miss Dorothy. She just turned 89 years old a couple weeks ago, I believe. Wow. And she reached out to me because I had been looking at this senior living facility for my husband, and I had been looking at the senior living facility for my father-in-law. And the one of the salespeople there, when we met with her, we connected and just had this really great relationship, which actually I'm about to put the sales girl's house on the market next week. So full circle. But she met Miss Dorothy, who was about to move into their senior living facility, and Miss Dorothy needed to sell her house, her longtime family home, full of antiques, full of all the beautiful things. And I worked with her and we sold her house. She was so happy. And, at each time I would come over, she would show me an antique, or she would show me the recipe for a soup she was making, or just whatever. But we just developed this really sweet friendship. I've visited her at her senior living place multiple times now. And she's just precious to me.
Yeah.
And unbeknownst to me, she had talked with her granddaughter about me. And her granddaughter and her husband had come into this property that they were inheriting in an estate. And they called me and said, and Sarah, her granddaughter, who's about my age, said, well, if Dorothy says we need to use you as a realtor, we need to use you as a realtor. And so I'm working with them now. And it's things like that that are so special to me, because I'm like, I know Sarah's grandmother and I've walked this walk with her. And now I'm walking the walk with her granddaughter and her family. And that brings it all home for me.
For sure. Yeah, it's very special in a really awesome small community, but then a giant city to have that kind of
yes
local, feeling and proof around you. You don't just know your neighbors, people all across the neighborhood and beyond. So that's an awesome story. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming today. I love chatting with you. We could do this for hours, but I'm sure you got to go off and sell a house or two this afternoon. So thank you for coming by. I appreciate you and look forward to the next time.
Me too.